Sitaram, once more welcome to SWA DHARMA, where we discuss topics in Shrowtaan Dharma, where we share information, coming to you exclusively on Sankhya TV on Thursdays between 6:30 p.m. and 7 p.m. So today's program, we are continuing our discourse on the Samskaaras. Actually, we would conclude the Samskaaras within today's program. Of the 16 Samskaaras, we are up on number 15 and 16. And just a quick reminder, the Samskaaras are ceremonies done throughout the life of a Hindu, whereby among other responsibilities he or she is asked to discharge would be the responsibilities to one's family, to one's community, to the nation, and by extension to the world. So the 15 and 16 Samskaaras are the Awasthyaadhaan Samskar and Shrowtaan Samskar. So we deal with Awasthyaadhaan Samskar first of all. This is actually the ceremonious installation of Havan upon entering the life of a grihastha, of a householder. Remember, in Sanatana Dharma, we talk about life of everyone being divided into 4 stages, not equal in years, in the number of years, but as far as the phase, they are dictated by the phases one undergoes. So grihastha is preceded by the first phase, which is brahmacharya, the student stage. So at this stage now, one needs to pay attention to keeping Havan alive in one's life, and actively so, because Havan is, among other things, is the medium through which the gods are fed. It's a very important part of puja. In the 16 offerings that constitute puja, Havan is a major offering. It's the most common fuel, samidha, used in Havan is ghee, and it needs to be mentioned that to ignite the Havan Kund, it is recommended mango wood, or even the twigs of the mango is the preferred choice, unlike pitch pine, which for whatever reason crept into the practices in Sanatana Dharma when Havan is performed. But one veers from using pitch pine. Mango wood is the one of choice. In some cases, depending on the purpose of the Havan, people might be introduced. In some cases, madar might be introduced. But mango will be the mainstay of Havan. Now, to maximize the performance of Havan, the fruits of Havan, there are little adjustments that we need to take note of. For instance, we need to designate an area in the home for worship where Havan will be performed. One may erect a small temple separate from the home structure. One may have within the home, inside the home area, an area designated for puja and Havan. Of course, it shouldn't be a main thoroughfare. It shouldn't be in the proximity of where there are distractions like television, like landlines, etc. The performer of puja, when that little construction is made or area designated at home, the person who is performing puja should face the east. And it's noteworthy that murtis or pictures should not be placed on the southern wall. If they are, it means that the performer of puja will have to be facing south, which is not recommended in the case of puja and Havan. And just a little reminder, across the board, avoid south entrances to areas, even to homes, to buildings. Avoid that. So that area designated for puja and Havan we should not enter from the south. It is okay, because the questions is often asked for clarity. If one has a northern entrance, then one is facing south when entering. The key point here is that we don't enter from the south. Then, having designated the area we spoke about, a little trimmings and adjustments, it needs also to be paid attention to that when we have our murtis and pictures where worship is going to be done, these should be installed on an appropriate date. If they are already installed, they can be consecrated on a proper date. And be mindful of the fact that installation of murtis, there is a limited span each year. It ranges from roughly February to mid-July. And this is when it's appropriate to consecrate the murti. This is when the breath of life is blown into the murti. This is when the murti or picture becomes jagran or awake, that we can elicit the necessary blessings that we need from such a consecration, such a sthapan. In case of where the murti or picture is ready in the puja room and we need to reconsecrate, all one has to do is refer again to the website SVVTT.com. We work out the days there on the monthly calendar. We work out the days for consecration of murtis. So one can hold for the necessary date, and one can always contact the Vidyalaya for information how is the reconsecration of a murti or picture done in a puja room. It's a very easy step. We can always walk you through that. In the interim, one is not being asked to abandon worship to your murtis and puja, but to, as we say, to lend potency to prayer and puja, it should be installed on a proper date. The main murtis to be installed would be Bhagwan Ganesh, Lord Shiva, Durga Mata, Lord Vishnu the Sustainer, we come back to that in a while, and Surjanarayan Swami, God of the Sun. This is declared in the Shastras. These are the 5 pivotal areas of worship. The 5 main manifestations of that Supreme Being, which will cover our survival, comfortably so, within life. In addition, Sri Hanuman has his rightful place in a puja room, and the divine supreme forms of Sita Mata and Sri Ram, and Radha Mata and Bhagwan Shri Krishna. So we will return to Lord Vishnu the Sustainer. Be reminded that very early on in our sessions and in one of our satsangs, we had hopefully established that there's got to be a differentiation between the Sustainer Vishnu and the Mahavishnu. Remember, all the forms of God, all of the gods and goddesses we are familiar with, come from one supreme infinite. And so that for better relating and understanding, he manifests himself in these forms, representing and highlighting certain portfolios, attending to our needs, and so also giving a light and shedding light on the expanse of his glory and prowess. So that is where these 5 come in. Vishnu Bhagwan is the sustaining aspect of Bhagwan Mahavishnu. The dissolving aspect is Bhagwan Shiva. The creative aspect is Lord Brahma. So we have the Supreme, and then we have what we might easily call the Trinity, the Creator, the Sustainer, and Dissolver. And within that Trinity, that's the Vishnu we are talking about. How is he recognized? It's easy. Often we'll see the picture of Bhagwan Vishnu or the Murti, where from his nabhi, from his navel, comes the lotus on which Brahmaji, the Creator, sits. That's the Vishnu, the Sustainer we are talking about. If we need to differentiate which is the Vishnu and which is the Mahavishnu. In addition, these are some of the recommended murtis or pictures that should be, ought to be installed in a puja room. Now, this can be gleaned from the daily prayer that is run every day on Sankhya TV, the morning prayer at 6 a.m., whereby adulation and recitation of mantras, short mantras, a prayer structure is given every day. And we would realize that these complement the previous deities we spoke about earlier. We are talking here about Mother Lakshmi, the consort of that sustaining Vishnu, Saraswati Mata, the consort of Brahmaji himself, the Creator, Kartikeya Swami, the god of warfare, the son, the eldest son of Shiva and Parvati. And when we say warfare, don't only think physical warfare. We are talking about the war of mental attrition, the diseases of the mind which we have to contest and combat with on a daily basis. And of course, the Navagrahas, who we like to conceptualize as the dispensers of karma. So with these combinations, that completes a puja room setting. And there are only 13 in number. So whether it's a mixture of murtis and pictures or one of all, it's 13 in number that will suffice in a puja room. So having reached the stage where we have the necessary murtis, pictures in the prayer room, we move further into developing the prayer structure and the approach to prayer, all leading up to this samskar, or part of this samskar, the 15th samskar, known as Awasthyaadhaan samskar, which is riveted on Havan. But the preamble, as it were, to Havan entails what we are speaking about. So we designate this area for prayer. Now, if we draw a reference, if we head out to dine at some dining place, restaurant and so forth, we'll be totally turned off. We'll find it repulsive if we have to, if the whole ambience is not clean and is not a nice setting. So too, in the prayer room, we are inviting God to dine. So not only should the prayer room be clean and presentable, so too the entire home should be, just as the restaurant setting. So one needs to pay attention to that. Sometimes through regular Havan, the murtis and pictures may become, with the suit, may become a little darkened and discolored. Take care of that. It ought to be spick and span, as it were. So our approach to prayer, we are all heading up to Havan. And it is always advisable that focus while doing puja. And helping to focus involves being in satsang, whereby we could look at one of the pictures and we draw a reference here and we'll come to it. And from that, as we utter the mantra, this is a picture of Shri Ram Chandra, God in his manifestation as Shri Ram Chandra. And if you say Om Shri Ramaya Namaha, short prayer addressing Shri Ram Chandra, it is not only reciting the prayer because we know it's all in order and proper to do it, but there has got to be a bit of focus. What we are saying, what it represents, whom we are taking, what this form of God, what sort of inspiration is imbibed by utterance of the prayer and by looking at the murti or the picture, as the case may be. So we draw reference of the Supreme. And, Ramayana is the book of definitions. And a Chaupai in Ramayana says, Mam Bhirakshaya Raghukula Nayak Dhritavarachap Ruchirikara Sayak, which essentially says, Mam Bhirakshaya, protect me, O Lord. Which Lord? Raghukula Nayak, Shri Ram Chandra, the chief of the Raghu dynasty. And in so doing, my Lord, Dhritavarachap, I pray to you, Dhrit, holding Varachap, that blessed bow, Ruchirikara Sayak, and that most powerful arrow in your hand. So we look at the picture of Shri Ram Chandra, we look at the picture of Bhagwan Ganesh, of Bhagwan Shiva, of Lakshmi Mata, and all the symbolism that is depicted and represented, they stand for something. And this is what we mean by focus. By staying in satsang, we learn of these things. So when the utterance of prayer is accompanied by a visual of what is necessary to inspire us, to energize us, then we are heading in that sort of direction. Incidentally, we had discussed this in, I think, probably one of the workshops. This is the protection prayer of everyone. If this is chanted, and it may not necessarily be chanted in the prayer room. At the start of our journey, we start the car, we're heading out to taxi for waiting transport. This is the protection mantra. But for it to have the necessary effect, one has got to initiate it, begin the recitation of it on an appropriate date. And that, in the course of our little discourse here today, we'll tap into selecting dates for jagawing, as we say, awakening mantras. But that is where the full potency of the mantra is realized, by choosing the day and time when we start it. But it's a good prayer to know. Continuing on lending potency to prayer, leading up to effective Havan, because these are all steps leading up to Havan, in this 15th samskar known as Awasthyaadhaan samskar, one can embellish prayer by not only the utterance of a mantra, so we head into the prayer room, we offer our mantra, and we depart. But we should also add and make time for the offering of flower, the relevant color of flower. That too, it's important. That too, we have discussed in previous programs. A quick reminder, Lord Ganesh is Pratham Puja, the God that we worship first. Recommended flower, white in color. If we don't have white within the home, of any color will do. But if we can, it lends that, that strength to the mantra. That was the declaration of that, and the quotation was given before. Then we can do a bit of dhoop, the waving of incense by the murti or murtis or pictures in case be, and the performance of arati. If one is squeezed and pressed for time, let's say on a morning, we can probably do the flower offering in the morning, and in the evening time when we have more time at our disposal and we can manage the situation much easier, then we can introduce the dhoop and arati. It all lends to the potency in our prayer. In addition, it is said, it is recommended that the Hindu ought to touch base with God at least 3 times per day, Trikal Sankhya. And that too we have shortened in conversations with our audience about how easy a maneuver that can be. Even within, at lunchtime, in a work environment, in a school environment, that can be maneuvered very easily. And very important too, what strengthens the Shakti or the energy or the divine force in a prayer room is the occasional recitation of stotras and stutis. Stotras and stutis, which are compositions which are not prose but in poetic form, in poetic structure, but it usually depicts certain characteristics of the deities that we worship. And this need to be, this lends a lot to one's prayer and to being able to extrapolate from one's prayer room and one's time of prayer the full potential of our offering. Again, SVVTT, the Vidyalaya can be contacted from time to time. We do workshops and we put a little accent, we develop these stutis and stotras. And so having these steps in place, we return to the main theme of Havan in this Samskar. So how often? It is said that at least on Utsavas, ideally the books have declared daily Havan. We know, and let's be real and practical, that sometimes it just does not happen. So what do? We don't want the Hindu mind to abandon because he or she cannot reach that stage. It's a work in progress. And somehow then, in a very paradoxical way, by staying in it, we find that we gravitate rather than fall off the system. So it's a good start to observe auspicious days, Diwali, Mahashivratri, Janmashtami, etc., Basant Panchami, which is coming up. Another occasion, birthdays and anniversaries. It's an ideal time to huddle together as a family and offer a little Havan. Interesting enough, people ask, well, what is when a birthday comes along, what's the puja we do? Who is the deity that we worship? Markandeya, the rishi known as Markandeya, is the ideal rishi to be divine form to be worshipped on a birthday. But birthdays and anniversaries are ideal occasions for Havan. And there are also Jagavi days. This is now your Pandit, one's Pandit will guide them, that we want them to gravitate to Havan. We want them to understand too that these practices of Havan, these spiritual practices, they carry a certain potency, and that can be realized by choosing certain days to do these mantras in Havan. And it can be a short form, one's Pandit can guide him or her. And Jagavi days, we were speaking about that earlier. On a month, there is hardly ever more, theoretically, than 6 days in a month to begin a new mantra, or whether it's in Havan or recitation. And really and truly, from experience, we at the Vidyalaya have noticed that of those 6 theoretical possible days, most times there are about half of that are really fit, because there are a lot of factors that have to be worked out to make it ideal. And it's like going to a destination. If there are two routes, definitely one will carry us to the destination faster. Jagawing mantras on appropriate dates is the fast route, is the fast lane that carries us to this destination quicker than when we choose a random day. So if we say, okay, Om Namah Shivaya, and we start on any day, we will reach our destination. If we say Om Namah Shivaya on a particular day at a particular time, we reach that destination faster. So in this samskar, Havan is the mainstay of our worship, and so the actual, having laid the foundation, which what we have discussed before, Havan begins. It is recommended with a very short mantra, water be sprinkled 3 times around the Havan Kund before and after Havan. And to maximize our offerings, it has been declared in our Shastras that the best way to make the offerings, like we are using prasad or we are holding the spoon with the ghee, it is to use these 3 fingers, as pointed out here of the right hand, the thumb, the middle finger, and the ring finger, these 3. We leave out the index finger and the little finger. And that all relates to Prakriti, which we would discuss obviously probably in a subsequent program. But essentially, these 3 fingers indicates philosophically that we want God involved in our offering. We want a bit of Satgun, we want a bit of Rajogun. We don't want Tamogun, that's why we leave out the little finger, and the ego, the Ahamkar, that's why we leave out the index. So this lens potency maximizes our offering of Havan. So in Awasthyaadhaan Sanskar, Havan is the mainstay, and really and truly one's pandit will guide one into the mantras that are most relevant to his or her situation. Now we come to the 16th and final samskar, Shrowtaan Sanskar. This really addresses as we advance in years, the other stages of life, which is we have Brahmacharya, which the samskar known as Samavratan, which we described and discussed earlier, takes care of that student stage. So in the Grihast, the householder stage, as we advance in years, the Vanprast, that is if we have a family, by that time the children would have been able to stand on their feet. And then Sannyas, where within the home environment there is renunciation of the things that we would have hankered after that may have been necessary at one point in time. It's no longer necessary. There's a paradigm shift. In this final samskar, it involves Havan, structured Havan, but 3 types, Havan addressing 3 angles, as it were. Garhapatya, which is attending to the Grihast with more specifics. So in Awasthyaadhaan Sanskar, there is addressing of Havan for the householder, but it becomes more specific in this final samskar. Then there's Ahavaniya, which is for the second 2 stages, the last 2 stages, Vanprast and Sannyas. And then Dakshinagni, which is what we know as the Antyeshti Karma, the final rites where cremation is performed. Somehow or the other, this last samskar, which is only 1/3 of the Shrowtaan Sanskar, has been tagged as the final sanskar. It's not the final sanskar, it's 1/3 of the final sanskars, which all involve Agni Devata. We talk about them briefly. Garhapatya, which is oblations are made with a degree of regularity, that is Havan. 2, this is for the householder now, there's accent on this part of it. His Kul Devata, so one may come from a home who worships Hanuman Baba, a tradition, who may worship Shiv Baba, Saraswati Mata, Lakshmi Mata, or whichever. So we uphold that practice of our ancestors, and structured Havan is done for them. Then one's Varan, whereas Brahman, Kshatri, Vaishya, Shudra, there are salient deities for each of these Varna. and they are given oblations, and the main deities are also acknowledged, where we spend time on Gram Devta, Gram Devi, where we live, the plot of land we might live or occupy, the village or town we occupy, the country we occupy, and the attendant spouses of these devtas. We give cognizance to the grahas, the guardians of the various quarters. So Garhapatya will take care of this Havan, addressing these deities. Our Havaniya will address, as we say, Vanprasth and Sannyas. And in this case, we may notice, so it is recommended in some quarters that the shape of the Havan Kund be square. And among the Havan that is done, where Agni Devta is again acknowledged and addressed, one gives special attention to the four main directions, meaning east, west, north, and south, and the relevant deities, and attention is given to that. So now we come to Dakshinagni, the third stage in this final samskara, Shrowtaan samskara, where Agni Devta is addressed. And this entails the rites of passage at cremation, when we, being the descendants, our those kith and kin have passed on, have done their leg of the relay in life. The main performer of it would introduce fire at the mouth of the corpse at the time of cremation, and during that time, from there on, at least right up to the Dasgatra, what we call the shaving ceremony, 10-day ceremony, he or she is asked to have restrictions in the diet and other restrictions, all tailored to temper the senses. Because technically it's a yag he is performing, he or she, and then within that period of Dakshinagni and the attendant rites, which will be the Dashgatra and Shraddha, one is reminded that after the day of cremation, Tilanjali should be performed from the morning following cremation on kush grass, of course. Very simple maneuver, could take less than 5 minutes. And then on evening times, a diya is lit somewhere on the outside in a small sheltered area to address the Suksham Sharir that will hover around that home in a divine form, Suksham Sharir, for a period leading up of 10 days, leading up to the Dashgatra ceremony. And then subsequent to the Dashgatra ceremony, that main performer who had lit the fire will now perform Shraddha, which we locally call the Bhandara ceremony, be it the 12th to 16th, 12th, 13th, 16th or 24th day after cremation, day 1 being day of cremation. So once again, we thank you for joining us here on Sankhya TV, where we have dealt with the 16 Samskaaras. Sitaram.